Hey there, guys. If you've been following mobile gaming news, you may have noticed that another Final Fantasy mobile game is going to be shutting down in a few months. Final Fantasy Dissidia Opera Omnia, if I'm getting the name correctly. Yep, they announced end of service in just a couple of months, which is definitely very sad for players that enjoyed that game. But it also makes you wonder, about Brave Exvius because it's another Final Fantasy mobile game. Now, while I don't think Brave Exvius is in danger of shutting down in the immediate short term, there have been some very questionable directions that the global team, or questionable decisions that the global team for Brave Exvius has made recently. So in this video, I'm going to be offering my personal opinions about what I think can be improved about some of the unit stuff that we've had recently. Now, honestly speaking, do I think my video or my opinions are going to change anything whatsoever? Probably not. Probably not. The global team is going to do whatever they decide to do, no matter what. But for the sake of discussion and mostly to just interact with the viewers and get your viewpoints as well, I'm going to make this video. I'm going to talk about some suggestions I personally have. If it makes a positive impact, great. If it's totally ignored, expected. But I'm going to give my thoughts on ways that Brave Exvius Global version can be made better. So hopefully we can avoid, shutting down in the near future, hopefully. Anyway, so as you see on screen, the first topic of discussion is Treasure Hunter Locke. And as many of you already know, it's too late for him. Locke is DOA. They decided they're doing nothing for him. It's too late for Locke. They already announced him in the news. He's coming out in 9 hours from now. It's too late. Locke is dead. But we're going to talk about the upcoming Final Fantasy Tactics premium units in an effort to, hopefully, they can avoid the fate of Locke where Locke gets completely ignored. So let's talk about Unknown Hero Ramza, a premium Final Fantasy Tactics unit, and Sword Saint Orlando, another premium unit due very, very soon. So, what are the problems with these units, first of all? So the problem with Ramza, for one thing, he's a relatively unfortunate element. He's the Earth element, and as we know, the Earth element, it's got like one or two decent units in it, like Yuffie, etc. But overall, Earth is not super good. And going forward into the future, again, there's like one, maybe two good upcoming Earth units, like Scar from the from the Full Metal Alchemist collaboration, stuff like that. But on the whole, there's really not much Earth upcoming that's good. So what can we do for Ramza to make him a more desirable unit? And same thing for Sword Saint Orlando. So, Ramza and Orlando at the same time. Both of these units are basically just damage dealers. Their damage is nothing special. It's like slightly behind the meta, not very good. They don't support the party at all. Their team building is overall not that great. Hold on, my God, I always forget to mute Discord. Anyway, yes. So they're overall just basically damage dealers, nothing special, kind of like Locke. So what could we do to make them more desirable? So here's a few bullet points that I've listed that can really improve these units. And I've tried to do things that are very easy for the global team to do without getting like really crazy with it. For example, I would love to sit down and give suggestions to make these units really unique with like special mechanics, new mechanics that don't exist in the game before. For example, one of the things I was just brainstorming, like I was thinking about how to use Ramza as like a time mage from Final Fantasy Tactics and using the quick spell to give units like a new turn during the same turn. For example, like after a unit took their turn, Ramza could like use quick and let that same unit get a second turn in the same round. Obviously, that would require heavy coding on the developer side. The game can't support that innately. It would need to be, rewritten from scratch. So as much as that kind of stuff would be awesome, and I would love to dream up all kind of unique, really outside the box mechanics to make these units cool and interesting, I decided to go the more realistic route, which is just adjust numbers. It's a relatively boring change, but it could still be very effective. And it would also be extremely easy for the developers to do this because it literally involves nothing but updating some numbers. So, what is the first thing I would do? The absolute first thing is remove the JP from the units. What I mean by this is the absolutely horrible, disgusting, outdated, just units are stuck in this stupid design decision ever since Titus STMR came out. It has handicapped units so hard, and JP is just stuck in this hole, and they can't figure out how to get themselves out of it. So what I would do, the first thing is remove the 120x LB mod cooldown. Every JP unit has this stupid mechanic, and it's so horrible. Every JP unit has this, a temporary modifier buff for their LB. For example, 120x LB mod for physical attacks. Orlando has the same thing. Increase LB modifier by 120 for 5 turns. It is full uptime, but it's just a stupid wasted turn, and all JP units have this, and I hate it so much. It is the stupidest, dumbest thing. Like, the reason we love Hayo so much, you know why we love Hayo? You know why we love Richt so much, and why Richt and Hayo were such great units? Because they don't have this setup move, and these setup moves are just a cancer onto the game. Get rid of these setup moves. They make these units so awkward in trial content, or more specifically, Clash of Wills content. I hate these temporary modifier buffs. Get rid of them and add them directly to the LB itself. Another thing is Titus STMR. This one is even worse. Makes units even worse. And again, JP is stuck on this. JP has not thought of a way to just make this obsolete, and I wish they would. Global, thankfully, has overall not fallen into this hole, but change their limit burst to be incompatible with Titus's STMR and the 5-turn boost. This thing right here, this 100x modifier for 5 turns to the LB. Every JP physical premium unit has this. Every non-premium is required to wear either Titus or Reagan's STMR. And it's just the most horrible thing, because units, their damage drops off after 5 turns. There's no way to recover it. It's just a big handicap on any kind of content that goes beyond turn 5. It's a terrible design. Titus STMR was a cool idea, but it has handicapped every single unit in existence since it came out. So get rid of all these temporary mod buffs and add them to the LB directly. So make it incompatible with Titus STMR, get rid of the passive buff, get rid of the active buff, and put all of that directly onto the LB itself. It'll make these units so much better in trial content. Another thing they really need is some kind of party support. The reason, once again, that we love units like Richt or Hayo or basically every other global exclusive is because they do their damage while also adding a little bit to your party. Ramza and Orlando are completely selfish. They do absolutely nothing for your party. So a very simple thing is both of them have a self-only demon and Reaper buff. So here is Ramza's self-only demon and Reaper killer, and Orlando has the same thing. Self-only demon and Reaper killer. It's a very simple change. Just make that AoE. because that'll be a double benefit. That'll, for one thing, they now have party buffs. Another thing is Reaper Killer is relatively rare, and the upcoming Dark Visions boss, based on the JP order, is going to be a Reaper. And there's not really a good AoE Reaper Killer option. The best is like Rosa, who is a dead slot other than buffing Reaper Killer. So by making Ramza and Orlando an AoE Reaper Killer buffer, it gives them a really valuable niche, and it gives them a really good reason for players to pull for these units. Like, you need a reason for players to pull for them. Even if they're doing good damage, just damage by itself is not really enough. Obviously, that'll always draw in like your top 10 whales, etc. But if you want to make these units, appealing to a broad audience, you need to make them valuable on lots of parties. And something like being a killer buffer is a really good way to do it. And again, it's a very easy change. They already have the killer buff. Just change it from caster only to be, AoE to the entire party. It's such an easy change, and it would add so much value to these units. Now, another thing, and this is kind of a major problem for all the units going forward until Neovisions Plus, is a lot of players are like, why should I pull for any unit right now? Because very soon with Neovisions Plus, like, the damage is jumping so dramatically, it automatically obsoletes all the older units, because the Neovisions Plus units are so much stronger than the current units. It's like, what's the point of even having the current units? So I would recommend you do some heavy buffs to the unit to smooth that curve leading into Neovisions Plus. Instead of it being from approximately 100 billion damage burst or whatever to like 200 billion, just double jump, smooth the scale a little bit. So a way to do this is by giving Ramza and Orlando some of these buffs. These are just a ballpark buff. I'll show you calculations in a moment. But increase their LB mod by an extra 150, add an extra 2,000 attack power to these units. This is from their JP units. Add this on top of the other stuff. And then change their leader skill in outside content to 850%. Orlando doesn't even have a leader skill. But change Ramza's leader skill for the Rebellion. Instead of 750 in Dark Visions, make it 850. Now, what is that going to do? That is going to definitely make the Rebellion party the best party. Is that really a bad thing, giving a really good, viable unit or good reason to chase a unit? So let me go ahead and show you some calculations real quick. Here is the current based on JP calculation. This is exactly as is from JP. Orlando is about 996 billion burst. As you can see, he's already pretty low compared to our existing units. And Ramza's even worse. He's down here about 952. So at the current time, why is someone going to pull for Ramza? Why is someone going to pull for Orlando? Their damage is already behind the curve, and once we get to Neovisions Plus, it's like way behind the curve. And on top of that, Orlando is a Thunder unit, and Ramza is an Earth unit. These are non-meta elements. Like, this is just like so many things going wrong for them. So let's scroll down to just some theory crafted numbers. Here is some calculations if they did the changes I suggested. Hold on, there we go. So this is with Orlando and Ramza. If you add 150 to their LB mod, if you add an extra 2,000 flat attack power to their kit, and if you add 100 to their leader skill. So here is a Neovisions Plus Lastwell, the first Neovisions Plus with no changes. He's at approximately 1,800 burst damage. And remember, our current max, is around 1,000 or 1,113 for Genesis. He's kind of, an outlier. But, like Orlando and Ramza are like at less than 1,000. And Lastwell is coming up at 1,800. A massive dramatic jump. But if you did the changes I suggested right here, you add 150 to the LB, 2,000 static attack, and you change their leader skill to 850, then Ramza would be about 1,400, and Orlando would be about 1,500, which would obviously be, the highest damage in the current game, but it's still behind Neovisions Plus, so it gives you this smoother curve, this gradual incline as we move towards Neovisions Plus, instead of going from like 1,100 to 1,800, this just dramatic jump up a cliff. This would give it a smoother curve, and it would give a lot of value to Ramza, Orlando, etc. It would make more people pull for them. Now, would it power creep Neovisions Plus? Of course not. As you can see, Lastwell is still going to be way stronger, even if you did buff these units. But at least it would still be, a smooth, gradual increase, not this massive jump. And here's just for some comparison's sake, the only change to these units these are Rebellion units. I only gave them a bigger leader skill in Dark Visions, just to demonstrate what a randomly thrown together Rebellion party would look like with Ramza's new leader skill if they did this change. So Locke would be about, 11, Lightning would go up to about 1,000, Yuffie would go to 850, and then Aegis would go to 702. I didn't change Aegis's passive stats or her LB mod because she is a non-premium, and as much as it would be nice for her to get buffs too, I do know Global only bothers buffing premiums. So they're most of the time, not always, most of the time. But there you go. So anyway, so change their personal damage to be a lot higher than it currently is, still less than Neovisions Plus. And then the last thing is to make them more viable in Clash of Wills. This is basically just the same thing that they did to earlier units like Roka, Tyvis, Lightning. Do the same thing for these units. So give them the 1,000 per turn autocast of morale, give them some Clash of Wills categories, and give them a small modifier buff in Clash of Wills, kind of like Lightning got, Cloud got, etc. Just, make their LB even stronger in Clash of Wills so that it scales properly. Because Locke is getting none of this. If they had done all of this to Locke, he'd be a lot better right now, and people would be hyped for him tomorrow. But so there's my suggestion. Let me know in the comments what you think, what else could have been changed, what I maybe went overboard. Is this too much? Do you think if Orlando and Ramza were doing this kind of damage, is that just too much of a jump before Neovisions Plus? Do you think I went overboard? Did I not go far enough? Let me know what you think. Let me know what you think. Let me know your thoughts, etc. So what else could we change? How can we make Global into a healthy game that doesn't have players wanting to skip everything because we know Neovisions Plus is coming, and we know that the units are very underwhelming as they are exactly. Because Ramza, even if he does, like, just for example, even if Ramza only gets the step 4, he only gets, some token Clash of Wills buffs, but his base kit is all the same, it's still going to be a bad Clash of Wills unit. For example, Lightning, Wondrous Flash Lightning, in theory, her Clash of Wills buffs were kind of nice, but what's the reason most of you probably don't use Lightning in Clash of Wills? Because Lightning still has the JP in the kit. Lightning has these temporary mod buffs. Lightning has a 5-turn buff that goes away, and her damage just drops off a cliff after turn 5. She's awkward to use, etc. So you've got to do all this to make a unit desirable to the global player base. You can't just slap on some Clash tags and hope that that's enough. You gotta fix the JP from the unit, make them easy to use, make them good on a long duration fight. Some Clash of Wills fights are going to turn 20. You gotta have that unit still being strong on turn 20, just as it is in the first 5 turns for it to be a global appealing unit. We need some party support, And hopefully we need some better damage to make them viable as we move towards NeoVisions Plus, because these are the NeoVisions Plus numbers, and they're pretty absurd. And it really makes you not want to pull for any current units because NeoVisions Plus is coming. So hopefully the global team is looking or watching. Hopefully they do something for Ramza and Orlando and don't make them just completely skippable units like Locke is, because, you know, as much as Brave Exvius does have problems, I still love the game, and I do not want to see the game closed down like Dissidia is currently doing. I want Global to keep on going, and keep being hopefully healthy and enjoyable. But to do that, they have to sell units, and in order to sell units, they have to be desirable. Because when you put out dumpsters like Locke, people don't want to pull, people don't want to spend, and the game goes downhill. And we don't want that. We don't want that. Okay. Hope this helped. If it's totally ignored, at least I tried. See you in a bit.